Welcome to the Tribe of Testimonies. Here you will find conversations with faithful Native American members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, sharing their stories and their love of the Savior. My name's Andrea Hales. I'm Navajo, and I'm glad that you've decided to come and join us today. My guest today is Ah-in-nist Sipes. He came to my house, which is awesome because he doesn't live anywhere near here, but he brought his mother here for a wedding of one of her friends, and so it was fantastic that he could make some time for me, for you, for us. And I'm so glad that we had this time. He actually taught me so much. I am forever grateful. And also, in the picture that you can find on social media, he shows his wife, and she's just gorgeous. And we talk about her during the conversation. But he said that she wore a Cheyenne shawl to the temple when they got married. And some of the symbols on that are the same as were on the temple before they renovated the temple that they got married in. I think that's super special, and I'm just so grateful and humbled by this learning experience that I got to go through for a few minutes with a brother. I love him, and I hope you feel that in this conversation. Here he is. I am in my home today with a traveler, Ah-in-nist. He came in from out of state, special for his mom, not for me. But he made a special trip down to my house, so I'm so grateful. Would you please introduce yourself in your tribal way as much as possible? If it's in your language, great. If it's not, that's fine. Not everybody speaks their language, and some languages are dead.
Eshoan Mishutz Maheo Eshoan Mishutz Desa Anhos. And that is, I'm a child of the Creator, and I am Cheyenne, and my name is Ratel Hawk. What I didn't add on that is that I'm the sixth person in my family with that name.
That is way cool.
Yeah, and I'd mentioned this already before we started recording. I'm very lucky that my family blessed me and named me by my Cheyenne name. It's my legal name, and I'm very lucky, and I feel very blessed that's always been my name. So I feel very grateful and blessed because of that. And also thank you for inviting me into your home.
I'm so glad you could come. Okay, would you please share something that you love about your heritage as it relates to the gospel of Jesus Christ? It can be pretty much anything. Story, celebration, a way of life, a ceremony. What do you love about your heritage as it relates to the gospel?
I feel like this is a little bit of a cop-out answer, but it's everything. It's all the things that you just listed off. It's everything. So my identity, who I am, every good thing in my life has come from living this way, and it's what brought me into the gospel. It helps me understand the gospel, but it's my identity. It's everything that I am, everything that I do, all the generations that came before me. It's all of those things. I feel like it's a cop-out answer, but it is all those things.
I actually really like that answer because to me, I'm visualizing how, and I know that you're a convert to the church. When you joined the church, it just made it bigger and better, even who and what you are.
Yeah, I'm a convert to the church. Oh, and before I go into that, I do want to say this, that I had mentioned this to you previously, but I want to say it to anyone who's listening. I am a stutterer. I've been one my entire life. I have speech disfluency. I was born with a speech impediment. I've had it for my entire life. I have really, really good days and really, really bad days, and I'm on a string of good days. And I'm also very nervous, and I'm very excited to be here. So if at any time during this conversation that I begin to stutter, I apologize to you and to anyone listening. But I just ask for your grace and forgiveness beforehand, and I will get through it if it does happen.
You'll get through it. It will be so great. So yeah, tell us about your conversion. Like, actually, tell me about how you were raised, and then tell me about your conversion.
So my father was he was a historian and a genealogist, and he was also, I guess, like the authorized historian for our tribe. And him and his friends, his uncles, his cousins, the ones that raised him, he was always interested in all of our history, all of our teachings. And so he became a historian. And so I grew up in the home of a historian. When I was younger, growing up, we would go out and essentially visit our family. And at the time, I didn't realize what it was or what was happening, but he was a ceremonial person. Later on, he got seated as a chief in our tribe. And so I grew up in the home of a chief who tried his best to live these teachings and to live everything that he could. My mother is a member of a different tribe, but they got married, and she was similarly tried to live the same way, but she wasn't raised in the home of a ceremonial person. But I didn't know what any of that meant. I just thought this is the way that everyone lived. So I share all that to say this. I was very lucky to grow up in a home where a lot of the teachings were important and valued, and as much as they could, a part of everyday life and everyday activity. On the church side, my mom is a member of the church. My dad isn't, and he's not. He passed away several years ago. But he was never he never joined the church. My mom did. She joined the church, but because my dad knew the history of our people, but also just a lot of tribes across this continent, he was very painfully aware, and as was my mother, very painfully aware of all the harm and pain that had been caused to indigenous people because of Christianity, or in the name of Christianity and manifest destiny. And I even had like my own grandparents, and some of them were the victims of the boarding school. And so because he was a historian as well, it wasn't this abstract thing. The details were very, very clear. And so there was a lot of celebration and love for our identity and our culture, but there's also a lot of animosity for modernity, a lot of animosity towards, Christian missionaries. And so I grew up in a home when it never related to the gospel was, it was a wedge. It was, there was good conversations. There was always good friends from the church, like home teachers that would come over, friends that would come over, but it was always this thing in the background. But when it came forward, it brought out a lot of contention. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's the home. Yeah, I guess I grew up in. No, but sure. I make it sound like there's all this fighting. I grew up in a wonderful home. Yeah. But in related to the gospel, there was this tension and this fighting and this animosity that was under there because of the history.
Yeah. So then, tell me about when you decided to join the church. So I'm guessing that you grew up and your dad basically was like, he doesn't need to go, and your mom's like, this is not a contentious. We're not going to fight over him going to church.
So I think the other part about this, just for context, my mom, she grew up in Western Oklahoma, and she's Caddo, and she grew up as a poor tenant farmer, and in Western Oklahoma, and they would pick cotton and pick peanuts and all that stuff. But whenever she was 17 or 18, she said, I need to get out of here. And one of her best friends said, I'm going to Utah to Brigham Young University. Mm-hmm. And my mom did not know what that was. She didn't know what a Mormon or Latter-day Saint was. And so she said, or her friend asked her to go with her, and she was like, yes, I'd love to go. I want to get out of here. And so I think about a week, if I don't, let's see if my memory serves me right. She, this is her story. She knows more about it, but again, I'm just telling it secondhand. But about a week before she went, her friend said, I'm getting married, so I'm not going to school. And so my mom said, well, I guess I'm going by myself. And she came up here, and jokingly, I say this, she found out that like non-member tuition was
twice.
Yeah,
It's double.
Yeah, it was more expensive, so she got baptized, and that's how she joined the church. Now, she felt it was true. She loved it here. She loved it here. She was taught the lessons, and then she met her first husband, who was also Cheyenne, and he's the father of my older siblings. And they fell in love, got married. They had children, but he passed away. And then sometime thereafter, she met my father. And so she was sealed to her first husband. And so there's also that also plays into it. And so there's a lot of these dynamics that are hard.
Yeah.
And, that bring up these really big, heavy questions along with just the things that I put in earlier. And so all those things that went into it, because there was the, on a macro level, there's just the history.
Yeah.
But then on this very personal level, what is eternity going to look like for them and for our family?
Yeah.
And so those were the things that they wrestled with and dealt with. The other thing too was, being in Oklahoma, my dad, he had long hair and braids, and he, when you saw him, he looked like, if there ever was somebody who looked like a native man, it was him. But also he experienced a lot of racism in his life. And unfortunately, he also experienced a lot of racism from some church members. And so there's just all these dynamics that played into it. And my mom wanted to be active. There were times whenever there was activity in the church, there were times that there weren't. And I don't know the details behind it, but I just know that it was this wedge that existed. And so again, there's the history and the big issues, but again, there's these very personal challenges and things that they dealt with. And so that was really, I wouldn't say a reflection of what was going on with me, but I saw all of that. And on a conversion side, I believe that as you get more converted to the gospel, you have to deal with these issues. The issues and the challenges that we face, whether they be very big and loud or very small and quiet and inside of us, you still have to deal with them. They come up to the surface and you just can't ignore them. So those were the things, I guess, as a couple or as a family that they dealt with whenever within the context of trying to live their identity as Indigenous people, and also, my mother being a member of the church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So did you go to youth activities?
Yes.
Did you go to primary?
Yes, I did. Again, there's like off and on throughout the time. And so I don't know what triggered it, but when I was 14 years old, I said, I want to take the missionary lessons. And I don't know what triggered that. And I have no idea what triggered that, but I said, I want to take the missionary lessons. And so the missionaries started coming over and they started, teaching. And there was always a different set each time that would come and teach. And I thought it was because, maybe I'm just like that tough, so that it's going to take the entire district or the entire zone to come teach me. Or the other side was, I think I was the only person being taught. And so they wanted to have like all the missionaries like come. But I remember they taught me all the lessons, and I remember like the plan of salvation cut out and all that stuff. And I don't know what it was, but I was born just believing that Joseph Smith was a prophet. Like I believe that, and I don't know why. I mean, the first vision, I just believe that is true. I just believe it. I don't have any like, here's the evidence. It's just I just believe that. But everything else, that's where the questions or the doubt, or I just didn't know. And also, part of it, like I didn't really care to know. I was just, living my life. But that part I just knew. But I remember they had the plan of salvation cutouts. I don't remember much about being taught, but I do remember these things right here. I remember them teaching the resurrection and them saying that when you're resurrected, you won't have any scars. The next lesson or a lesson after that, I remember there's a missionary and he was sitting on the couch and he goes, "The gospel doesn't make your burdens lighter, it makes your back stronger." I remember that. And then this is the real reason that I got baptized. There was one missionary in particular. I remember thinking, there's something different about this person. There's something different about them. And I didn't, now I know what it was, but at the time I didn't know. And I remember thinking, I want to be just like them. And if getting baptized is how I do that, I want that. And I wanted to be just like him. And so I got baptized. And at my baptism, again, I don't remember much about it, but I remember my father came with his eagle fan and pipe and blessed me, which, again, both at the time, I didn't understand a lot of those things, but, that was common, happened on a regular basis. But he came and did that at my baptism. And now it's a big deal to me, but I also remember kind of realizing, looking back, I imagine the members of the ward who were almost all of them were white, probably were like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on?
For sure.
But also, I think we need to give credit to their, at where we lived.
Not freaking out about it?
Yeah, not freaking out about it or not saying you can't do this. And also for my father's courage and bravery with all of his, very poignant, tender feelings to do that.
The past, and
yeah,
not just the past, but his past.
And it actually very, very much his present too.
That's what I mean. Like,
yeah, and so I remember that, and I was baptized into kind of semi activity because of his activity, inactivity, all those things. And then when he was when I was 17 years old, he died. He took his journey home, and he was a seated chief, and I had to make it. Since he died and he was a seated chief, that seat then fell to me. And I knew what it meant to be a chief. I knew that it meant to be incredibly generous and to take care of other people, to take care of the welfare of the tribe, and that when someone comes to you, you have to do it. And I was 17, and I knew of the responsibility that came with that, and I wanted to be those things, not necessarily being the chief, or being a chief, but being generous and kind and to take care of people. But I knew of the heavy responsibility it was, and I knew I wasn't ready, and I said no, because I knew of the responsibility it was. And so I said no. But also after actually, I guess when he died, I realized that I needed to decide what type of person I was going to be. That I needed to decide what type of person I was going to be, good or bad. What is it that I do believe? How am I going to live my life? And this, I guess, sent me on this spiritual journey to figure these things out. Like many Native people, actually just many people, I mourned the loss of my father, but a year later, my brother died. And that also was, and again, like many Native people, we experience loss. Unfortunately, it's very common. But I had to deal with these very big, heavy emotions, but also had to make very big, heavy decisions. And so this is really where I had to decide, again, what type of person am I going to be? Who am I going to be? And it sent me on this journey, this spiritual journey, deciding like who am I going to be, and what does that mean? What is my identity as a young boy who was raised with Cheyenne teachings that I love and want to embrace, but then also there's this restored gospel of Jesus Christ that I know is good, and I know it's true. I don't understand it fully, but I want to embrace that too. But then, as I mentioned earlier, all the history and all those things that go along with that, how does that all fit together, and what does that mean for me? And so I share that to say this. I don't think that's unique to me. I know that there's a lot of indigenous American Indian people who have those same challenges, those same questions. And so I try to say, I know that's not unique to me, but I definitely experienced that I guess my entire life really, but yeah.
Wow. Holy cow. So where did you go from that? Like, Did you serve a mission? Did you go to college? Like, where did you go from that? How did you figure that out?
So from this point on, I decided that I needed to read the Book of Mormon and decide, is being a Latter-day Saint something that I really want to do? And I wrote an article about it later on. But so really, this is the story right here. This is, I guess, my conversion event. At this point, my creation event. I guess it's all my creation, but I don't like the term creation stories. I like creation event. And everyone has a creation event. Families have creation events. Individuals have creation events, but this is, I guess, it right here. When I was 19 years old, was the first time that I read the Book of Mormon, or I sat down to read the Book of Mormon for the very first time. And I had 3 questions. And the first one was, skin color really bothered me. It deeply, deeply bothered me. And it bothers me to this day. And I said, if I'm going to do this, I need an answer as to why is this. Because I've also have seen other Native people, how the depiction of the black skin color as a curse has negatively impacted them. I've seen also how some individuals have perpetuated that idea even in very recent history, and it being viewed as a curse. So it deeply bothered me. So that was the first one. And the second one was, I'm Cheyenne, and I believe these teachings to be true, and I know they're good, and I know they're from the Creator, but how does this fit in? And then the third one was, who's Jesus Christ? And going back to, the things that my family historically, but also in the recent history, had dealt with because of the spreading of Western Christianity. And so I said, I need to figure these 3 things out. And so I read the Book of Mormon, and I remember loving it, actually, and understanding it. That's the other thing, too. I understood what was being said. And in particular, I'll get to, I remember reading the Covenant of Baptism in Mosiah and reading it over and over and over again to take care of others, and that we covenant to do that. That was so familiar to me, to always serve the people and to take care of them. That's what it means. I know a lot of tribes believe, but that's what it means. That's what I was taught. That's it. Reading the address of King Benjamin, taking care of others, the needy, and how we're utterly dependent upon God. Him being described as the God of nature, that it was not new. It was things that I had always known, that I was, I guess raised with when my family went to church, but also, raised as our teachings. But despite that, it wasn't answering those questions. As I kept reading, I got to the story of, I love the story of the brothers of Lehi and Nephi. I just love that story. I love them as missionaries. I just love that story. And then I remember when I finally get to whenever the Savior comes, and he comes, and I love that. I love that account. I love that account. I remember reading it, and I remember he's giving the Sermon on the Mount, and I remember this part came up. If your eye be single, your whole body shall be filled with light. But if your eye not be single, your whole body will be filled with darkness. And how great is that darkness? And all of a sudden it hit me so hard in my heart that it wasn't talking about skin color. It was talking about countenance. Yeah. And it just hit me so hard that that's what it was referring to. Not skin color, but countenance. And this is much later on, but I'd gone and served a mission, all that stuff. And when I came back from my mission, someone asked me this question, what's the biggest difference you've seen in yourself? And I didn't even think about that. But as they asked me that question, I had to really ponder, like, what differences have I seen in myself? And this, I guess, this came to my mind was I remember I'd been on the mission for maybe 6 months. I was training a brand new missionary. It was summertime. We were riding our bikes, and so we stopped at the church building to go in and, get water and wipe the sweat off our faces. And so we go inside, and I go to the bathroom. I put water in my hands, and I wash my face, and I look into the mirror, and it was my nose and my eyes and my face, my ears, nose, cheeks, all those things, but I didn't recognize myself. But what changed was my countenance. My skin color didn't change. My countenance changed. And anyways, I share that because that answered that question. But I still had more questions. I kept reading, and then I get to 4th Nephi, and this is when it happened. And I remember sitting on, I can remember it now. I'm sitting on my bed. I have the Book of Mormon open. It's summertime. I can see the trees. I can hear the birds. I remember the green leaves on the trees outside. I can hear the wind. But I remember what I read was, because of the love of God which should dwell in the hearts of the people. Because the love of God which should dwell in the hearts of the people, there's no envy, strifes, whoredoms, nor any manner of lasciviousness. And surely there could not be a happier people created by the hand of God. And I remember I read it this way, and I know it doesn't say it in the text like this, but I remember reading it this way. There was no Lamanites or Nephites or any manner of ites, but they were one, the children of God and heirs to the kingdom of heaven. And how blessed were they? And that, it hit me that was the great teaching. That's the great teaching of my people. I know that's the great teaching of many people. But these two warring pieces of my heart, they were warring because I thought I had to choose between them. And really what they were is that they're two pieces of a greater whole. They're two pieces of a much bigger whole. They needed each other to survive. I didn't need to push one away or push one down, and no man can serve two masters, that whole thing, which I saw many Native people buy into, or they rejected their Native heritage completely, or they just ignored this conflict. And for me, it was the exact opposite, where these two pieces, they needed each other to survive. They needed each other. I needed both of them. And again, they're two pieces of a greater whole. And I've always said that it's the same to me. It's the same. And that's when I knew that it was true. And I knew what that meant. I knew the commitment level. I knew that it wouldn't just be right now, or I'm going to serve a mission. I knew that it would be for the rest of my life. I knew it would be for the rest of my life, and I committed to that. And I finished the Book of Mormon, and I said, well, I guess I got to go on a mission now. And but that's how I found out it was true. But I still really wrestled with being a disciple of Jesus Christ because of the history of the things I just shared with you. Yeah. And where that came from was, I have my grandmother, I guess both, I should say both my grandmothers. Both of them were, to me, old Native women. And they both had favorites. One of them, and let me say this, they both loved me. Let me say that first. They both loved me. Both of them were these powerful, strong Native women. And what Native woman is not a strong, powerful Native woman? But anyways, but both of them were strong, powerful Native women. And they both had favorites. And one of them, I was not the favorite. I was low on the list. But the other one, I was the favorite. I was her favorite. And she died when I was 5 years old. And so I don't have any memories of her. The only thing that I guess I can remember is that her hands, her knuckles were like mountains. And because she had rheumatoid arthritis, which caused her immense pain. So her knuckles were these mountains. I remember running my fingers over them. And I remember looking up at her and seeing her white hair around her. And that's the only thing I remember. And I don't even know if those are real memories or not. But I was her favorite. And so as I grew up, the only stories I ever heard was how much she loved me and how she could be a mean woman, but she loved me. And she loved me with a perfect love. And my mother said to me one time, she goes, "Ah-in-nist," she goes, "I love you. I love all my children, but I love you. But Cleo, your grandmother, your father's mother, loved you more than I could ever love you." And she would hold me as a baby. And holding a baby when you have rheumatoid arthritis in your hands causes immense pain. And so here's this person who I'll never meet in this life, or that I have no memories of. But what I do hear about, I have these faint memories of her that I don't know if are real or not. But I hear stories about how much she loved me and how much that caused her to suffer and to love me in spite of that. And so all of a sudden, that's where my testimony of the Savior came from. And that's my testimony of the Savior. And it came from a very traditional Native woman. And that's the greatest gift that she has given me. And because of that, her Cheyenne name, her name is Mokina, which means red feather. And that's the name of my daughter in honor of that. And so that's my testimony of the gospel, of the Book of Mormon, of being converted to this restored religion. And in a way, I guess it's really not a conversion because it's always been there, but going back to these two pieces are just one piece. They're the same.
They explain each other. Would you ever go back and seek the chief position in your tribe?
No. I've made other sacred covenants where I have committed to serve my people, my family, and I just don't apply that to my tribe, but to everyone. Yeah. And of course, we make covenants like that in the temple as well. Yeah. And I take that really serious, and I just want to serve. I just want to serve my people, whatever capacity that is. And so that's how I view myself, as I'm just someone who can just lift where they stand, help where I can. Yeah. So that's what I do. That's how I view it.
Is your wife Native? No,
she's not. She is a big ball of Europe.
Yeah.
On that side, she, growing up, I saw a lot of my uncles would get with non-Native women, and they could sometimes unknowingly be incredibly disrespectful of teachings or of different things. And I share that to say this, is that a lot of Native people ask me, like, "Oh, is your wife Native?" And I say no, and they're like, "Well, is she like respectful, into it, all that stuff?" And I share that to say this, is that she's been incredibly respectful, and I don't think she knew what she was signing up for. And I kind of feel bad about that, because I remember when we first met, we were dating, and when things got serious, I said, "Hey, this is really important to me. And it's always going to be a part of my life. I'd love it to be a part of your life. You don't need to participate in this if you don't want to. And if we have children, it's going to be a part of their life too. And I want them."
Because they are.
Yeah. And she said, "Okay." And I don't think she realized what she was signing up for and the responsibilities that came with that. But she has said yes. And, she has said yes and has been incredibly respectful, or as respectful as someone can be, and sees the value in it. I remember in particular, there's a family story. She, when she gave birth to our daughter has, dark skin like me and dark eyes and dark hair. And she says that seeing this brown baby that she loves coming out of her white body, and then that brown baby being placed on her chest after our daughter was born, that she had this moment of realization that her daughter was going to walk through this world differently than her. And that was a switch for her of what that meant to raise Native children. And I always say, raising Native children is incredibly hard, especially in this world. It's incredibly hard and difficult. But her having that experience, there's this switch that occurred, or I guess a light bulb went off, where she said that this is important. These teachings are important. This knowledge is important, and it needs to be valued and celebrated and embraced and handed down. And so that was, I guess, the moment for her.
That's amazing. I'm so glad that that happened for her that way. I don't know. It's pretty amazing. So you are doing good in the world.
Trying.
Yeah, you are. And what do you do now?
So like work or just life?
Yeah, work. Yeah, both. Yeah.
So work-wise, all of our children are little. We have little children. We have one that's about to start kindergarten, one that's going into pre-K, and we have a 1-year-old. So we're just in the thick of that life where like I wake up and spend time with my children, then go to work. I work the 9 to 5, then I come home and I work the 5 to 9, putting them to bed. And so we're just in the thick of having little kids right now. And I have to give a lot of credit to my wife, because she's the one that really pays the price. Because, they don't want me to put them to bed. They want mommy. And so we are right now just in the thick of raising little children. But work-wise, what I do for my profession is I train professionals on how to work with children in particularly, but children who are experiencing a mental health crisis, and training professionals on how to work with children and families who have complex needs. And I particularly train a lot of police officers, juvenile detention centers, on how to work with kids and their family to help them when they have really challenging times. So that's what I do for my profession.
I think that's huge. I think that's so important in the world today. I'm grateful that you're doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you bring your children the gospel and the way that you've learned the gospel? How do you teach them that?
So, they're little, but they still get it. We don't always do family prayer, but we try. We don't always, we go to church. And one thing I'm really grateful for the primary and the nursery programs, because our children love going to church. They love going, they love being there. And the other thing too is that they will get up and run around too, even during sacrament meeting. One of them will run up, and there's sometimes where I have to go sit on the stand to do stuff, and my kids will run up there and run back and forth. And, I want them to sit and all that stuff, but I am so happy that they feel so comfortable in a church building that they can be themselves, that they're not scared to be there. They're not scared that someone's going to get onto them for feeling safe there. I want them to feel safe everywhere, but I'm so grateful that they feel comfortable enough to get up. And I don't want them to, because it can be distracting, but they will run back and forth in the footsteps when they walk across the stand, or when they're running down or running in the hallway. I'm so grateful that they feel comfortable enough to do that. And really, if it's going to be someone's kids that's running around, I want it to be mine. And I get up and we chase them, but they go to primary, and they love primary, and I'm so grateful for the people who are in those callings and in those positions, because boy, I tell you the impact that they can have in supporting families as they teach their children the gospel. My children sing the songs on their own. My children, they don't always want to pray, but they know what prayer is. And it just continues to reinforce our efforts that we have in our own home. And, the opposites, not the opposite, but, it's also true with teaching them who they are. Just like me and my name, we made their names, Mokina and Versi and Anhost, we made their names their legal names. And in the home, we call them by their names, but, out in the world, we've also given them English names as well, because, unfortunately racism does exist and still exists. And I wanted to give them the ability to also, be able to walk in this world as much as they can without that fear, but trying to do everything we can in our power to teach them who they are and everything that means in its entirety. And also, I'm so grateful for the support that comes from my local ward, my stake, but also the larger tribal community that they're a part of, to continue to teach them who they are in every phase, every stage, every day of life that they're walking on this Mother Earth.
Do you live on the Cheyenne?
No, I live in Norman, Oklahoma, which is, in Oklahoma there's 39 tribes. Well, there's 39 tribal governments in Oklahoma, but there's, I think the last time they said there's 200 tribes represented in Oklahoma, just because people moving. And so there's a lot of native people around. I live and work in Norman, but I try to go back as much as I can for my job. I travel a lot, and I always try to do, even though I don't particularly work actually I do work in Indian country, but I don't work specifically training Native professionals. I train, everyone, but I try to do anything I can for Native communities when I can professionally. But I share that to say this: every opportunity that we get as a family, we try to be involved as much as we can. Again, having, little kids, it can be hard, but we do try to make it an effort.
That's so cool. And they know their grandmother well?
Yes, they know, they know both their grandparents really well. They call my wife's mother Nani, and they call my mom Kehen, which is, the Cheyenne word for grandma. So they call her Kehen. So. But
you said she's Caddo, is that?
So she's Caddo.
Caddo.
And in Cheyenne, whenever someone marries a Cheyenne, they become Cheyenne.
Oh.
And so,
I did not know
and so I'm Caddo, but I wasn't raised Caddo.
Sure.
I don't know what that means. I don't know all the things that go around. I'm very proud of it though, but I was raised Cheyenne, and so I identify as being Cheyenne.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and that's really great that they get to know both of their grandmothers. Is the other grandfather?
Yes. They both my wife's parents are alive. They're around, and they recently moved, but we have a great support system and a great little family community around us.
That's so cool. I love that. You said you had older siblings. Are you the youngest?
I am the youngest, yeah.
And are they members of the church, or?
So, both my parents were married before they met each other and had children from those marriages. And then those marriages ended, and then they met each other and got married and had me. And on one side of them, they're not. The other ones, they are members, but there's one that is very active, and the other ones are not the other ones are not. However, my surviving siblings, my two older sisters, who I see regularly, they're both members, and I want to share the impact that older siblings can have. when I was growing up, my oldest sister, Benita, my first memory of her was her coming off the airplane from her mission. So she's significantly older than me. But that's my first memory of her. And that had a big impact on me. But also I remember during that time period when I found out, this is something I want to dedicate my life to. As I did that, she lived in Arizona at the time, and she worked with all the tribes out there. And I went to go stay with her for a summer. And she is so faithful, and she's so faithful. And I look up to her so much. But when I went out to Arizona to stay with her for the summer, I found out I needed to go on a mission, and what all that meant. Everywhere, I remember this, everywhere that I went, every place that I went, every meeting we had just happened to be with a native member of the church. And guess what we ended up talking about? Actually, I really didn't say anything. It was them just bearing their testimonies to me and saying all this stuff. And that wasn't planned. But she created that space for that to happen. Unfortunately, later, I want to talk about her just for a second. She was a tribal prosecutor. She was a human rights ambassador for the UN for indigenous rights and human rights. And she was she's so accomplished and so incredible. But because of the negligence of others, she has a traumatic brain injury. And a lot of those things were, all those things were taken from her. And now she is someone who, she is an adult who, she can take care of herself, but she will be a dependent for the rest of her life because of a traumatic brain injury. And one of my best friends, one time he goes, "You're a Mormon?" He saw a Book of Mormon in my house. He goes, "You're a Mormon? You're a Mormon?" I was like, yes, I am. And you should be too. And he goes, "Okay, I'll check it out." And I invited the missionaries over. We started teaching him, and it was kind of like a, he said yes, and the missionaries
came. Let's do it
now. Yeah. And so we set up lessons, all that stuff. But I remember my sister would sit in on those lessons, and there was a lesson about adversity. And they asked her, like, Sister Bigfoot, which, her last name is Bigfoot. They were like, "Sister Bigfoot, would you like to share your testimony about adversity?" And she goes, "Yes." She goes, "I have a traumatic brain injury. And because of that, a lot of things have been taken away from me. And it makes me very, very sad and very, very angry. But when I pray and read the scriptures and I go to church on Sunday, that anger and sadness goes away." And she goes, "And that's how I handle adversity." And that's my older sister. And I wish I could be like her. I wish I could be more like that. My other older sister, is, I guess, not active, has a lot of the same issues that I have with the church. She was baptized when she was little, but, there's a lot of these issues with the church. But she's the first person that any time that someone in her circle, not just our family, but someone in her circle, is in some type of adversity or challenge in their life, she says, "You need a blessing. I'm going to call my brother right now. He's going to give you a blessing." And I think I've given more blessings to her non-member friends than I have anyone else. But it's because of her faith in those and priesthood blessings. And so, my siblings, even the ones that have passed away, but my siblings, they're such incredible people, and their faith, they have much more faith than I do. And their faith, their conversion, their commitment to what they know is true is just an example to me. And I'm nothing compared to them, but I'm so grateful for, again, the parents I have, but also the siblings that I have, for how wonderful they are. So
I want to meet them. That's so great. You ready for the last question?
Is it okay if I say just one more thing?
You bet.
So, one of the big reasons why I wanted to do this with you was, I did write an article for the church about being American Indian and a member of this church. And I wanted one of the main reasons I wrote the article was for American Indian members and American Indians. And there's things in that article that I think it's said, but I want to be explicitly clear about those things. And I wanted to say it on this podcast for anyone who's listening. In my life, I have met many Native members of the church, and a lot of them have dealt with all the issues and challenges that we have talked about today. And I've seen them to where some have hated the color of their skin, have rejected their heritage and their teachings, and even times when maybe their grandmothers or grandfathers or aunties and uncles wanted to teach them who they were, but because they bought into the false view of colonization and white supremacy, they rejected that and said, no, I don't want that. I don't want that at all. And they moved away from that. And then later on, they're so full of remorse and regret and sorrow that they had done that. And I wanted to talk specifically about that. As I said, I believe that these two things, they're the same. And if there's anyone who has ever done that and has done that and has felt that shame and has perpetuated that shame, but now feels so much remorse and guilt because of that, what I wanted to, the reason I wrote this article was to address that and to say this. Rather you were born and embraced your identity or you did it later on as an adult, embrace who you are. Embrace who you are. And that when you did those things, if you rejected it, to forgive yourself, your grandmothers and your grandfathers still love you the same. They loved you the same that when you were born, when you were little, the same that when you are now. You didn't shame them and you didn't bring shame to yourself. You just didn't know any better at the time. But now you do know better, and to embrace yourself. There's nothing wrong with the color of your skin. There's nothing wrong with who you are. There's nothing wrong with your heritage or your identity. And my invitation is for you to embrace all those things, to wave the eagle fan and blessings, to learn the name of the 4 directions and the 7 spirits, to embrace all of those things, to recognize Badger who presides below and Eagle who presides above, to embrace all of the teachings and all the knowledge, to embrace it. Because if you do, you will come closer to the Creator, you'll become more converted, you'll understand who you are more, and that's what I want people to take away from this. That conversion is not assimilation. Those are 2 different things. This is what brought me to the Savior, is my heritage, my culture, and I want everyone to embrace theirs and to not push it away, but to embrace it fully and completely, to embrace who they are. Rather it be, again, you're born immediately into it, or you learn it as a child, or you learn it as an adult, to completely embrace it.
Wow, that was pretty powerful. I appreciate that. Timely, so timely right now. Thank you so much.
You know, I just want to share one last thing and then we can wrap up. As I said, my dad was a historian and a genealogist. And so I have, family genealogy, like a ton. And there's been this part of me that actually other people, but also this part of me that says you need to take these things you need to take these things and do the temple work. And I know their history. I know what they've done. I know what they've suffered. And many of them rode to war to preserve their way of life. They fought against manifest destiny and Western expansion. And I said, how can I do this? How can I know what they lived and died for, and to do this And I really wrestled with it and wrestled with it and wrestled with it. And again, this is, I'm not speaking this about abstractly, but, my own family history. And it deeply bothered me. And as I remember, I was praying about, like, what to do, because I feel like I need to do this, but I know what they lived for and what they died for and what they suffered. And it was like this voice, the thing that has always been with me, the thing that has always led and guided me, this voice or thought or whatever came to my mind. And it said, to some, I revealed myself as the Redeemer and as a Savior. But to your fathers and mothers who dwelt on this continent, I revealed myself as the Creator and the knowledge giver. And I realized that it was okay to do this, that it was okay to move forward with this work. And I want to, I guess, wrap up and just essentially just say this was, it's the same. It's the same. He's the same. He's the same that all our fathers and mothers who dwelt on this turtle island knew. They may have not known all the picture or just bits and pieces, but they knew. And Native people have so much to offer this world. They have so much to offer this world and to give to this world and to be a benefit to this world. And if we embrace who we are, we will find so much more peace and understanding if we do that. And I guess my invitation is to everyone, all Native people who hear this, to embrace who they are and to live it to the best of their ability. And more knowledge will be revealed to them about who they are and where they come from and where they're going.
Just wow. I'm humbled, and I'm grateful for those words too. I do have one final question. What does it mean to you to know that you belong to the tribe of Israel?
As I've been in my journey and have come in contact with a lot of people, I've met 3 patriarchs. And because that's, I guess, where we learn our tribal lineage in the house of Israel. And the first one has a painting of the sun dance in his house, right next to the temple. The second one, the patriarch that gave me my patriarchal blessing, I didn't know this till I got there, but he was another Native man. And guess what we talked about for an hour?
What?
And then the third one was one that, he moved from New York to Oklahoma. And I had this impression to go visit him. And so I got to visit him, and he's a very old man now. And I got to have breakfast with him and his wife, and he said to me, we would talk about, indigenous peoples and things. And I remember I got to leave, and he goes, before you leave, and for those of you that hear this, you'll understand what he's asking. He said, can you touch the doors and the windows and bless our home in the way that your tribe blesses homes? And so when you ask me that question, what does it mean to be a tribe of Israel? These 3 patriarchs, even someone of that level and that status, recognizes the things that we've talked about today. And so to answer the question that you asked at the very beginning, it's the same. It means everything to me. It's who I am. It's what I do. Everything that I do, it's what has formed me, what's made me, what's brought me here, just as it has you, just as it has all of our peoples. So.
Thank you. Amazing. Thank you so much. I am recovering from the Utah Gathering of Tribes. It was amazing. We ordered way too much food because way many people did not show up who said they were coming, which is disappointing. I wish you all came. Every single person who listened to this, I wish you came. And I am really grateful for all the volunteers that we had, like a zillion. I am humbled by that. And I also on Saturday morning, we had a little devotional before we broke out into classes. And I was softly crying when Divine Heritage started singing, and their song was about walking and following in Jesus's footsteps. And then they sang a second song, and it went from lovely, sweet, soft crying to ugly bawling. I'm sorry, whoever witnessed that. I couldn't help it. It was a message directly to me from Heavenly Father. They sang, "My life is in your hands." And I thought my friend was the author of it. I'm incorrect about that. But the group that I danced with once upon a time, who has dissolved because life has gone on, they used to sing it at firesides. So hearing Divine Heritage sing that song and knowing the message of it, I just knew Heavenly Father was sending me a gift. And I worked really, really, really hard on the Gathering of Tribes. My body was to its limit, and I offered that to him. My life was in his hands. I just wanted to give to my Savior, and I hope and I know that he accepted it. I know, because that was the message of that song. Anyway, I hope things are well with you. I hope you are getting closer to our Savior, and I hope you're having a super wonderful, awesome day. Tribe of Testimonies is not sponsored by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The music is a traditional hymn, "Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing," arranged and performed by Kyle Forsyth. I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear how this podcast is affecting you. And I'm always looking for guests. If you or someone you know would be a great guest, you can reach me at tribeoftestimonies@gmail.com.